And smash it. Okay. Shit, smash. Get him. Audio. What the hell? Record. Wait. Discipline. Stvarless. God damn it. Bendy. Let's connect to audio. H. That's right. Oh, Jesus. Can anybody hear me? This is Ray.
I can hear you, Ray.
I can't hear anyone in the conference room.
Yeah, two,
Oop,
929-205.
okay.
It is, that's what we have to offer.
Very gurgly.
Sounds like they're inside a barrel talking.
Yeah.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Hello,
Hello, who dat?
it's me.
Who
Deborah.
me?
Deborah's at home.
I'm at home.
Okay. I see just,
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Or she was.
Just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 12 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
Well, sometimes we have to mute everybody other than Ray and this.
And Deborah does, she said was on.
Oh, she's coming in virtual.
I'm coming in. I'm trying to come in.
Deborah?
I hear you.
Yes, it is me.
Thank you for checking in, participating.
There we go.
1, 2, 3, 4. Where Coben is going to be here?
I don't want to be called to do anything because I'm called. So I hope everybody will be here when we have a quorum.
Well, you have 2 members.
Yeah, we have,
You have quorum. Yeah, well, yes.
we have 4, we're good. And I see.
4 regulars and Susan. Not that you're irregular, but.
I was going to say, yeah, I'll answer that right now. Janet, I lost your email and I'm just trying to read all of this in a slow way. I've got it, but I'm just trying to all at once in 5 minutes, read it and understand. When I've had months to do it.
Active speak.
What happened at the last meeting where every like 15 minutes the lights went on?
I know.
I know we
What?
did, but
Every couple minutes.
You guys are great.
We're good.
thank you, John.
You leaving? How about turning everything off? Cammy knows how to do it. Okay. Thank you, Johnny. Take care. Good night.
Are we done?
Not quite. All right, it is 7:35, and I think we should commence. And welcome everybody to the special meeting of the Zoning Commission, October 13th, 2020. A couple of rules or regulations for this meeting. If you speak, could you announce yourself in your name before you speak? That's one thing, right?
I thought they were gonna be on mute.
Well, there's
Ray and Deb.
two on virtually,
Okay.
and then there's, Ray, do you know if Dave is attending this meeting or not?
I don't know. I've talked to him, but I just didn't raise the issue. I'll give him a quick call on my phone.
Not that it matters going forward for public hearing purposes or special permit purposes, but I don't like seating you, Susan, and then when Dave comes in, unseating you.
I'm just
And he
hate
can,
to be seated
yeah.
on a night. Any other night would have been better than tonight because there's so much information here.
yeah. Well, we're going to go through it all. So right now I'm seating Ray Reich, Deborah Radosevich, Janet Hill, myself, and Susan Smith to make up our attendees of this meeting. This is, to my knowledge, the first town meeting that is kind of a hybrid. The commission is meeting of sorts in the town hall, dealing with obviously masks and proper social distancing. Our primary reason for meeting tonight is to discuss 12.8 temporary uses. And I think what I'd like to do is I will run through quickly the language of 12.8 as we have been discussing for the last year, almost and a half. And then I will ask Janet to read a letter that she has written on her own thoughts, her own words, to the commission. And in answering some of the situations that the Washington Planning Commission has brought up and some of their criticisms, and then we will have a discussion with Wayne Heilman's letter from the Planning Commission dated April 1st, 2020, and we'll try to get through the Planning Commission's issues as well as some of the thoughts that Janet has had. And I know that in reading the language as proposed tonight, and I haven't read them in probably 2 or 3 months, but I think every time we read them, we read them a little differently, and we say, okay, why did we put that language in? But so it's okay if we change what we have, and our timetable will not be upset because if we get the permanent language that we all agree to set and get that information to the commissioners, we can still, in our October meeting, we can vote to go to public hearing. And that's my objective. So, Ray, are you back?
I am. Dave is on his way in. He's phoning in now. Or he's,
Okay.
I have a question. There's some people here in the meeting that are just identified by their telephone numbers. Is there any way to find out who they are?
These would be the general public, you mean?
I don't know who they are. It just says 203-418. that just has their telephone number down at the bottom.
Tammy, for the purpose of the minutes,
Yeah, how do you,
we should try to get those who have connected to our Zoom meeting here and get their names. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but maybe, I don't know. They have the ability to speak only if you unmute them.
that's true. If they want to say something, they have to say their names. And
Yeah. Okay, well, we might as well get started, and Ray, you said that Dave,
I think Dave's on board.
Dave, are you here? Dave Workhoven?
I just heard
Are you
his
on
voice,
mute?
then he cut out. I don't see his phone
Okay.
number and I don't see his face.
Who is all the way to the left? Whose picture is that? I think Ray is now all the way to the right. And then Deborah's in the middle somewhere.
Shelley's up upper left, isn't it?
Yes.
Louise.
Who's on the left?
Louise.
Oh, Louise is.
Yes.
Ah. So but why is she up there on that screen when it's, or is that for anybody?
It's for.
Okay, so it'll be split depending on how many participants. But we don't have Workoven up there yet.
No, there's one that was iPhone, which I'm assuming is Dave because it came in last.
Okay. Well, he is if he's not seated, he can certainly still ask questions. All right. Well, I will not let technology get the best of us here. So I'd like to start by simply reading the proposed language for 12.8, and then Janet will commence with her thoughts, and then as she comes to her specific issues with the Planning Commission's referral, we'll go sort of back and forth with what what Wayne Halliman said, and then what Janet is responding to. All right, so 12.8, temporary uses. This is the proposed language. Temporary permits may be issued for certain structures and uses in accordance with the following provisions. 12.81, temporary construction structures when a lot is being prepared for the construction of a permitted permanent structure or the establishment of a permitted permanent use. A permit may be issued for one or more structures to be used solely for A, storage of equipment and materials required for such preparation or construction, or B, a construction office.
Hey, Nick, can I jump in for a second? Do all the commissioners,
Sure, Ray.
all the commissioners have this in front of them as I do?
Janet and I do, and Susan does, and you and Tammy does, and Ray, you do.
Yep.
And hopefully Dave does.
And
Is that Dave?
I am on my way. I'm listening to you. I'm in the car, so I don't have it in front of me.
I have mine in front.
Okay. All right.
Thank
We
you.
will welcome you, Dave, when you get here.
I'm on my way. Sorry to hold everything up.
Ask
Not a
him why he was late.
I don't dare.
Watching a ball game. Nothing risque.
All right. The zoning enforcement officer may issue a temporary permit for up to 2 such structures, provided the structures would meet all setback requirements for a permanent structure. The duration of the first such permit shall be not greater than 1 year or 2 weeks after the completion of preparation or construction of the permanent use or structure, whichever comes first. Permits may be renewed for periods of not more than 6 months. Temporary 12.82, temporary trailers for living purposes, a permit not to exceed 4 weeks in any calendar year may be issued by the zoning enforcement officer for one visiting trailer to be used for living purposes on a lot zoned for residential use. Any such trailer must be parked on the rear half of the lot and must be located at least 25 feet away from every lot line. No more than one such permit shall be issued in any calendar year. And typically 12.8, 12.81, 12.82 have not been under scrutiny by the Planning Commission, and we believe that what we have put forth here is the language we're going to be putting forth to a public hearing. Moving on, 12.83, temporary events requiring no permit. A, temporary uses that are incidental and customary to the permitted principal use of a parcel in a residential district. We can go, let me just get through this and then we'll go back and discuss it as necessary. B, annual events that have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more before, and insert the date of amendment. C, temporary events on property owned by the town of Washington, religious institution, or schools. And D, temporary events within the B1, B2, B3, and B4 districts, temporary uses districts, period. 12.84, temporary uses requiring a zoning permit. The zoning enforcement officer may issue a zoning permit for a single day event not listed in subsection A above, provided the applicant demonstrates that adequate parking can be provided. No more than 2 such permits shall be issued in any one calendar year on the same site. All such uses / events shall, and I believe there's a typo, that should be removed, shall require a zoning permit and shall be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 12.85, temporary events requiring a special permit. A special permit shall be required for any temporary use lasting more than 1 day, not described in section 12.83 and 12.84. Such use shall be subject to the standards of sections 13.1c of these regulations and shall be limited to circuses, carnivals, festivals, concerts, artistic performances, galas, and similar type entertainment. No more than 1 special permit may be issued in any one calendar year for a temporary use on any lot or parcel. No such temporary use shall be permitted for more than 7 consecutive days. All such uses / events that require a special permit shall be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So for our general discussion tonight, we will be dealing with 12.82, 12.83, and 12.84 and 12.85. Janet, would you rather that I read Wayne's and then you can respond to the whole thing, or do you want? Okay. I'm now going to read, I guess it's a referral from the Planning Commission dated April 1st, 2020. Referral of proposed revisions by the zoning regulations, section 12.8, and this is required for any regulation change, whether it's requested by the commission or a townsperson. This Mr. Solly. The Washington Planning Commission has reviewed and discussed the proposed revisions to the Washington zoning regulations as of 27 February 2020 regarding section 12.8 temporary uses. Somebody needs to be muted. The Planning Commission unanimously finds that the proposed revisions are inconsistent with the Town of Washington's 2014 Plan of Conservation and Development, POCD. The revised sections 12.81 and 12.82 are not inconsistent with the POCD, as the plan does not address temporary structures or trailers. However, portions of section 12.83, 12.84, and 12.85, which address temporary events, impose limits on arts, cultural, and recreational activities that conflict with the POCD, and portions of section 12.83 pose threats to the, quote, harmonious use, unquote, of our commercial and institutional properties. Specific issues of concern are noted below. This is not an exhaustive list. Thank you. 12.83.b. This clause is arbitrary. Okay. 12.83b. Annual events that have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more before such a date. We put on it after this becomes our regulation. 12.83b. This clause is arbitrary at best and exclusionary at worst. The Planning Commission believes that grandfathering previously held temporary events by setting a minimum tenure for this existence is discriminatory. There is no purpose in exempting some temporary events over others based solely on longevity that could be considered consistent with the POCD. 12.83d, which our proposed regulation says, temporary events within the B1, B2, B3, and B4 districts. Codifying unlimited and unpermitted temporary events in the business district could have unintended consequences. Section 2.3.2 of the Washington zoning regulations stipulates that, quote, all uses not specifically permitted are prohibited, end quote. And temporary events are not cited as a by right permitted or special permit use in any business district. This clause would allow a property owner in a business district to stage multiple temporary events without regard to incidental or customary uses, numbers of days, time constraints, or permitting requirements. Exempting the business district from the permitting process in this manner would conflict with the existing uses in harmony with the purpose of this district clause in the current zoning regulations, section 7.71, 8.71, 9.71, 10.51a. Moving on, Mr. Heilman goes to 12.8.4. This temporary use is requiring a zoning permit. This clause would have a chilling effect on future cultural and recreational events. For example, the Steep Rock Association, not covered by proposed section 12.83.c and 12.83.d, would be restricted to 2 additional temporary events per year going forward. This would effectively act as a regulatory constraint on their cultural and recreational growth. Going on, 12.8.5, limiting temporary events subject to a special permit to 7 consecutive days eliminates the possibility of any event occurring over 2 weekends. Presenters of arts and cultural events typically offer programming during the weekdays to accommodate the availability of their patrons.
Weekend, you said weekday, makes a huge difference.
Oh, that's over 2 weekends, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The possibility of any event occurring over 2 weekends. Presenters of arts and cultural events typically offer programming during the weekends to accommodate the availability of their patrons and the general public. In reality, this clause restricts events to 3 consecutive days, unless they occur under Section 12A3C or 12A3D, in which case there are no restrictions as to the number of consecutive days. The 2014 Plan of Conservation and Development clearly and repeatedly indicates that the town of Washington should support and encourage arts, cultural and recreational activities because, 1, the town has a long history in doing so. 2, these events promote economic and community vitality. And 3, they make Washington an attractive place to visit and live. It is difficult to imagine a scenario where the Planning Commission would approve curtailing, limiting, or otherwise restricting these activities without a clear rationale. At the other extreme, it is irresponsible to grant the unrestricted use of temporary events to select entities without regards to the general welfare of the community or without intent to promote effectively the town's Plan of Conservation and Development, Zoning Regulation 1.3. Taken in their entirety, these proposed revisions of the zoning regulations create more problems than they solve. The Washington Planning Commission urges their rejection. Best regards, Wayne Heilman. All right. If we want to follow along Wayne's, well, let's listen to Janet is going to slowly and cautiously read her her essay, if you will, on, in part, the Town Plan of Development of 2014. And then I think she will then get to specifics with regard to Wayne's language in his referral. So, Janet?
Okay, well, 2 things. The reason I had written this was when back in May or June, we didn't think we were going to have a chance to discuss this before the public hearing. So I had written this out as if it was going to be read at a public hearing. Yep. And I don't respond to every single thing in Wayne's, in the Planning Commission's referral.
Could you speak up just a little bit more? Please.
Okay, so I was disappointed after reading the Planning Commission's 4/1/2020 referral regarding zoning's proposed update to Section 12.8. I am in general support of zoning's proposed revisions, which isn't to say that I would not support any further revisions that the Commission might consider now, but I do support the proposed language for 3 reasons. 1, some of the proposed language clarifies how the regulations have been carried out in the past, writes it in black and white so there would be no question in the future about standard procedure. There have been major changes in the makeup of both the Land Use Staff and Zoning Commission in the last few years. And rather than leave this section open to future interpretation, I think it is wise to make these specific clarifications now. 2, implementing revisions that clarify the regulation makes it more likely that Section 12.8 will be administered in a consistent manner throughout town. I think it is very important that the zoning regulations are applied fairly and consistently to all applicants. 3, I believe that administration of the proposed Section 12.8 will help to preserve the residential character of our residential districts and neighborhoods. In its April 1st review, the Planning Commission wrote, and I quote, "It is difficult to imagine a scenario where the Planning Commission would approve curtailing, limiting, or otherwise restricting these activities without a clear rationale. I think one has only to read the 2014 Plan of Conservation and Development to find this clear rationale. While the plan includes and supports a creative economy, it also continues to support the protection of the town's residential character. The 2014 plan states, and these are quotes, "It should be stressed that while Washington pursues the enhancement of its economic base, it should be cautious in undertaking activities that could negatively impact the low-density character of the town's residential neighborhoods. Addressing the town's economic advantage in the arts, entertainment, and recreational activities," the plan states, quote, "These activities are important to the town's economic life and should be supported in appropriate locations." And just one further quote, "Washington's zoning regulations should be reviewed to determine whether they promote or hinder creative and dynamic economic development. The regulations should be revised as necessary to assure a clear and concise pathway for appropriate development projects while still protecting the town's unique village centers, residential districts, and overall character," unquote. As a past Planning Commission alternate and as the town's past land use administrator, I helped work on 3 updates of the Plan of Conservation and Development. Preservation of rural character, which I would also describe as the preservation of the residential nature of our residential districts, was and is one of the foremost goals of these plans. I would go so far as to say now that the proposed zoning regulations, which would allow and currently already permits 7-day events in the residential districts, and which proposes to expand the types of temporary activities permitted under Section 12.8 to include festivals, concerts, artistic performances, galas, and similar type entertainment, is extremely supportive of and in fact promotes the economic goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development. Add to this that the proposed language would also exempt from permit requirements, A, annual events that have been held at the same location for 5 years or more, and B, temporary events held on property owned by the town, religious institutions, and schools. I find these additional provisions make the proposed Section 12.8 even more supportive of the economic goals of the POCD. The Zoning Commission must also consider, however, the stated purpose of Section 4 of the Washington zoning regulations, which governs the farming residential district. It states, quote, "It is intended that development in this district, which covers most of the town of Washington, will consist primarily of scattered residential, agricultural, and related uses, open space, low-intensity recreational activities, and other uses that will retain the rural character and natural beauty of the town. Therefore, it is the duty and responsibility of zoning to protect residential neighborhoods. While I think that most Washington residents would welcome the opportunity to attend a 7-day gala, concert, or artistic event, I also think they would not be happy to have such an event conducted next door to their home. I think that expanding the time limit under Section 12.8 to 7 non-consecutive days or to 10 or more days so that events may be scheduled to last over 2 consecutive weekends would be an unacceptable burden on the majority of our property owners in our residential districts. I disagree with the Planning Commission's opinion stated in its April 1st referral letter. I apologize for the length of this statement, but also want to respectfully include comments on some of the specific criticisms made by the Planning Commission. 12.8.3.b, the provision that annual events that have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more require no zoning permit, was the recommendation of Attorney Ziska, Zoning Commission Counsel, on how best to address the many charitable and fundraising events that have been held over the years in town without zoning permits. These include events such as the Oregon Softball Tournament and Kiefer 200, which had never previously been required to get zoning permits. The proposed section, however, does not specify that this section applies only to those annual events that had never previously been required to obtain zoning permits. I recommend this language be added for clarification. 2, 12.8.4. I think the complaint here is the part of the proposed language which states that no more than 2 permits per year may be issued for temporary events on any one site. First, this section would not impact any institution that already operates under an approved special permit. For example, the schools, library, town landmark site, and Steep Rock already have special permits, which already include the many temporary activities and events that will be conducted throughout the upcoming years in support of and associated with these institutions. This section also does not impact temporary events that are customary and incidental to the permitted principal use of a property. For example, holiday celebrations for family and friends, anniversary, birthday, and graduation parties, weddings, etc., for all of the members of a family would not be limited to 2 per year. For those temporary events that are not customary and incidental to the permitted principal use of a residential property, these would be limited to 2 per year because, as I've already said, it is the Zoning Commission's duty to protect and preserve the residential character of the residential district. 12.8.5. The Planning Commission objected that temporary events would be limited to 7 consecutive days. First, no change is proposed here. This is the current regulation. Second, I've already expressed my opinion on the importance of protecting the residential nature of residential districts, and have pointed out that this is also a goal of the Plan of Conservation and Development. Keep in mind that under the special permit standards listed in section 13.1.c, the Zoning Commission must guard against uses that would impair adjacent property values, that would create nuisance on adjoining properties, and or would be detrimental to or adversely impact the neighborhood or adjoining properties. Lastly, it is possible to implement creative solutions for those who maintain it is essential to the economic and artistic viability of the town that these types of events be permitted to run over 2 weekends. I think that events that endure over 2 weekends could be promoted as town-wide events with the various artistic and concert performances scheduled at different locations throughout town. As an example, the first night or two and or the last night or two of a 2-weekend event could be scheduled at the Gunnery's New Theater, the Town Pavilion, a church hall, the Town Hall, Montessori School, the Chappaqua Auditorium, etc., etc. These are locations, even those located in residential districts, where public events are welcome, usual, customary, and expected. The use of these locations would draw more event goers into the town centers.
Yep, there we go.
Into the town centers where our local businesses are located, and so it would be more beneficial to them and would contribute more to the town's local economy. Section 12.8 could be further revised to include incentives to hold these types of temporary events, not in the middle of residential districts, but at institutions, on public property, or at locations where well-attended public events have been customary. In conclusion, I stress that the proposed Section 12.8 supports and promotes the economic and artistic goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development, while at the same time, it protects the rural and residential character of Washington's residential neighborhoods and districts. The Zoning Commission cannot choose to do one or the other. It is the Commission's responsibility to promote and to protect both. The end.
Thank you, Janet. Well done, yep. So,
Can I apologize first for
watching a ball game instead of being here.
Quite all right.
I knew I was supposed to be someplace, and I didn't look at my calendar, but
I know.
the Dodgers in Atlanta were pretty interesting, so I apologize.
That's quite all right. Okay, the copy of the proposed regs, basically that we're putting forth to a public hearing at some point, hopefully December. We've seen them all. We've discussed them thoroughly. Now, there are sometimes we start parceling and picking up words that we're not sure what they actually mean in a specific sentence. Let me just give you an example. 1283D, temporary events within the B1, B2, B3, and B4 districts. Well, we don't define temporary in our list of definitions, and we came to this conclusion basically saying, okay, businesses have not had to get any kind of permit if they had a sidewalk sale, if they had end of year sale, a dress, their dresses were outside in the hanging on hangers for a dress sale in the town property in front of or behind Marty's. So it's as I pick this apart, and we have to think about, okay, what are we really asking for here? Temporary events within the 4 business districts.
You want to say temporary events?
Also, that community event in June.
I'm sorry, say it again, Janet.
There was also that community event, 1 or 2 June, where all the business districts.
Yeah, that's a community day, I think. When the depot.
that was
I couldn't hear what you said, Janet.
Yeah,
Back in June, maybe once or twice, I'm not sure, all the local businesses had booths outside their stores, and there were also booths in front of the town hall. I think that kind
a
of
little
temporary.
tent setup. It's like
event would be.
a business association sponsored community day, I think it's called.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, and
I think that would fall under here.
but that would fall into there. A sidewalk sale. I guess we didn't want these to necessarily be. We thought of them as they should be exempt from any permit. They're a commercial entity, and they do what they have to do in order to have a sale or a sidewalk sale, or the community day is sort of open to the whole depot. But
McLaughlin's having some kind of tent sale now, I saw a sign on it.
Yeah, dresses on the street. Okay. But Janet, you brought up a good point at some point about, defining temporary.
Well, also.
And go ahead.
Also, I was wondering, might it help make this more specific if it said, temporary events on,
Temporary commercial uses?
temporary events on commercial properties in the business district? I mean, because there's also residences, like, in Marbledale. So if we limited it to the commercially used properties in the business district, that would help.
Temporary commercial events within the B1, B2, B3.
Temporary.
We want to be more
Temporary
specific.
events on commercial property.
Well, but we're restricting it to B1, B2, B3, and B4 anyway. So those are the commercial districts.
Right, but if there's commercial properties.
There are residential uses within those. Some of those. In fact, the depot has apartments on several different locations within the commercial district.
Mm-hmm.
But so Janet, you were saying, how do we define? you're asking for temporary commercial events within the B1, B2, B3, B4, but you're exempting, or you're what do you do with a Washington Food Market building where you have both commercial and then residential upstairs? You're restricting these uses to commercial uses.
You're not allowing the residential uses, temporary permits for residences, and then what you're saying, right?
Well, they could have their birthday parties, whatever, but they couldn't have like a 7-day tag sale.
The residences within the business district, you're saying?
Yeah.
I
don't know.
No, they couldn't. But this was specifically cited to give the 4 business districts sort of a pass with their outside events. Anything they do inside their commercial entities is fine. You know, nobody has an issue with that. It's those rare activities. I'd say the town-wide, sponsored event by the business association is a sort of a group town-wide event that happens once a year. And that would certainly be also exempted.
I think you're
but
trying
in order
to
to
commercial entities, and also that the single day. I think you have to get some time frame in that. You don't want the businesses to have month-long celebrations outside, do you?
Probably not.
So that under E, which we got rid of in a previous iteration, it says single day events. We got rid of E at one point.
So temporary single-day commercial events within the B1, 2, 3, and 4 districts. Temporary single-day commercial events. So that does not include that which a renter or even an owner within of an apartment in the commercial district, they would have, well, if they owned, see, most of the apartments do not go with land, have any land to do anything outside anyway. But if you have like the apartments over by GW, well, what I don't want to do is try to create scenarios for every potential scenario that may come about given a residence in the commercial district. I think that they would be part of a single day event where you go to the zoning officer, for parking issues. So I don't think a residence in the commercial district would be necessarily governed by 12.8.3D. I think that is specific to the commercial, as we're now saying, the commercial entities or the temporary one-day commercial events. So I think it's a good idea to one day.
Commercial event indicates anything that's raising money. A commercial event is anything that's raising money. A commercial entity is actually somebody that is a business that's registered as a business. So I think you have to be careful to define those different.
Yeah, we don't need both, right? So in trying to narrow this down to exactly what we want the 4 business districts to have as their right with no permit, I think that, and I want people to weigh in on whether or not by adding to that D, temporary one-day commercial events within the B1, 2, 3, and 4 districts. D. Wayne, I'll read Wayne's comment about that section again. Codifying unlimited and unpermitted temporary events in the business district could have unintended consequences. Section 232 of the Washington Regulations stipulates that all uses not specifically permitted are prohibited. Well, you could say then that we didn't, before dealing with this specifically, we didn't
Did you,
really.
this is canceled out. Do you have that?
No, I don't. That's an older, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Okay.
Deborah mentioned it. That's the wording
Yep.
that used to be there before it was taken out.
Yep.
Can I
Can
suggest some language for this? Maybe temporary single-day events by commercial entities within the B1, B2, B3, B4 districts would be exempt. So that's temporary single-day events by commercial entities.
So why would you need the
Temporary.
word temporary? It's simply a single day event.
Okay, you could take temporary out, yeah.
And Nick, to your point about the word temporary, temporary was designed by the Merriam-Webster people a long time ago to be a vague word. We can't easily define temporary. It's there for a purpose. And in section 12, we use temporary, I'm gonna guess, 12 to 15 times. It's part of the literature, and I think we just have to live with it. Not a popular comment, I guess.
I appreciate it.
Very interesting.
Also,
The dictionary defines temporary as lasting for only a limited period of time, not permanent. But that's no more specific than,
That could be 1 or 2 days.
yeah. So maybe we get rid of the word temporary, put down 1285, yeah.
The planning letter said, complains that we don't list temporary uses as allowed on, in our commercial districts. But, I mean, we list retail and business uses. We don't, it doesn't say whether they're full-time or part-time or temporary or full-time. Single-family dwelling, we don't say lived in, owned, or rented. I mean, I think just that the fact that we allow retail and business uses is enough without having to specifically say temporary.
Okay, so if we say single day commercial events.
No, you can't say commercial events. Because somebody in an apartment.
Yeah, but we have to mention single day. Well,
What she said was single day
commercial
events by commercial entities.
I'm sorry, say it again, Janet.
Single day events by commercial entities in the business district. That's what Deb said.
I think that's clearer.
So that's for D?
That's for D.
Could you read that again, Nick?
Janet? I didn't write it down. Tammy did.
Single day and
Yeah.
single day events
Day
for commercial
event.
entities.
Again, please.
Single
Single
day
day
event.
events by commercial entities in the B1, B2, B3, and B4 districts.
In the B1.
There's nothing limiting the number of those single day events.
Right. I don't think we want to limit.
No, I just.
Yeah.
Can I play devil's advocate and be the only one here that agrees with Wayne Holman for the reason being that I'm an event planner for 40 years and you can't turn an event around on a day or two. And Janet, your ideas are good, but like the pavilion, if you had an event for 2 days on a residential property and then went someplace else, there's a million things you have to lighting, sound, food stations, you can't just move an event from one weekend to the next to another location. There's a huge amount of setup and breakdown for any event. And I think that would be crazy to have one event called something the gala weekend, and one event weekend 1 and weekend 2 at the pavilion or the Montessori school. It's just a huge amount of work. And it would be so costly to do that the tickets would be out of most people's budgets, beyond their budgets if you had to pay for all that stuff and breakdown twice. That's why I think Wayne was saying 9 days, so it could be a weekend and a weekend. And I know that's 4 nights that the residential people would be discomforted, but, in the very first open meeting, I asked Nick how many people had complained. He said less than a handful. So that means 4 or less. And I understand they're very important, but there were 82 people there, and a lot of people that I talked to afterwards said they didn't know about the meeting and they would have been there. And I know majority doesn't rule, but couldn't we make some concession by limiting, instead of having a 3-weekend event, a 2-weekend event, just so they can make some money? I mean, to set up and break down for a Friday night and a Saturday night, it's cost prohibitive.
Yes, but
I see your point, I understand,
Okay.
and I would agree if it was like, the Beatles were gonna be at Chicago on 6 days in a row.
Right.
You wouldn't wanna move them in the middle to some other place.
Right.
But if it's the Beatles for one day, and the Rolling Stones the next day, and then photography exhibits the next day, they're different, and I would think they could be moved from
Well, just
location
think
to
of
location.
porta sands, food stations, lighting, sound, staging, backdrop, decor. I mean, it's endless what you have to go through.
Susan,
Your checklist is long.
Susan,
Deborah?
Deborah?
I think the thing we have to keep in mind is this is taking place in a residential district. So
Right.
we're not limiting what can be done at the high school or what can be done at the Washington Montessori School or what can be done in any of those other commercial areas. We're limiting what's the infringement on individuals' rights to have a glass of wine and relax on their porches without hearing music.
Yeah, 4 nights out of 365, and if it were me, I have a park right next to me, and the kids are shrill, the little girls are shrill all summer long, and I put up with it because I moved there and I knew it was there. So I went in with my. I can understand noise disturbances more than most people.
Knew that there was a park there when you moved there. These are people that have a reasonable expectation to privacy and quiet. And one of the main reasons why they buy property in Washington, and that's why the Planning and Zoning Commission made such a point of protecting the rural integrity, because I don't want stuff like going on next to me. If I moved next to a park, I would expect that to happen, but I didn't. I moved into a quiet area and I want it to be quiet. I don't want.
Well, what I was thinking, 4 days out of 365, one night you go to a movie, one night you tell friends it's time to invite us over for dinner, and maybe you make plans, date night, one of the 4 nights. So it's 4 nights that maybe people should get out of their house and just do something fun in the city, in the town, and let the event go on when 1,000 people are involved. I mean, if 1,000 people are coming to an event, I just think the greater good is important.
Well, okay, but this isn't a zoning regulation for one property, it's a zoning regulation for the entire town.
Right. But like logistically, if the Beatles came in and set up a 3-night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night at the town pavilion, would the town let them set up for 3 days and ruin it during the day for other people who want to come over and play softball during the summer, or do this with all this sound equipment and lights at the pavilion? Would it be permitted? Do you want to think about if you want an event like that at a town property?
That's up to the selectmen and the town parks and rec department. But I think we're getting a little bit off the track, and I just want to remind everyone that the regulation as it stands right now says 12.8.1, a circus, carnival, or similar type entertainment. And this, let me read the preface. Temporary permits may be issued by the zoning officer for the following uses if, in his judgment, the public convenience and welfare can be substantially served and the appropriate use of neighboring property would not be substantially or permanently injured. And these 12.8.1 says, a circus, carnival, or similar type entertainment for a period of not more than 7 days. That's been the regulation for 25 years. We got an interpretation of what 7 days meant by council. And based on the circus, carnival, and similar type entertainment event, he determined that it was 7 consecutive days, and there was no waffling or there was no argument, and that is what our regulation is now. But we said 7 consecutive days. But his interpretation of what we have right now, still in place, is that it meant 7 consecutive days. A circus or a carnival or a similar type entertainment doesn't set up for 1 or 2 nights and then goes to Roxbury for 1 or 2 nights. They set up for a week. Our Fireman's Carnival were Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights here. And when we had a circus in the depot years ago, 100 years ago, and out at Fairgrounds Road, they were setting up for a week's period.
I don't think a gala or a festival is going to operate where they charge on weeknights, Monday to Thursday night,
Yep.
the Friday, Saturday, Sundays. Maybe a church charity event, a fair, something like that.
Who says they're not? Look at what's happening up in Morris.
What is happening?
They have 5 nights a week in a rural area, concerts,
At
now
Pulaski's
till
Barn.
February, on an open land.
You're talking about Pulaski's
Yeah.
Barn.
Yeah.
It's
5
an
nights
old,
a week.
And their houses around it?
yep.
Yeah.
It's right
Not
in the
many.
center of East Morris. It's where Route 61,
And you're way in from Washington.
63 goes through.
Near where D. Giovanni's is.
And it's an old dairy farm where the owner, now the grandson of the original farmer there, has turned it into a venue, a wedding venue, and it just as Dave was saying, it has these events, and there are residential properties around it
That
on at
sounds
least.
ongoing. Obviously, they don't have the same 7-day rule we have, but 7
They had a more
consecutive days.
restrictive rule, and because of this COVID business, they got a permit from the zoning officer, I think, to do this, because getting people outside, not having inside events.
Then it's going to be over after COVID leaves.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean somebody else isn't gonna come in and wanna come here and do 5 nights a week pay events, as opposed to what you're saying, just Friday and Saturday.
Right.
I know
You
how,
don't know what
How
somebody,
do we are
Okay.
7 consecutive nights, and they can. If you're worried about that, this doesn't protect you.
they can, so
Okay.
why, no.
Yeah, Deborah, go ahead.
I know how I would feel, and I ask you all to think about this yourselves. If your neighbor decided to do special events and whatever, fundraisers or whatever, for periods of time in their residential area, I don't think you'd agree with it. And I think if you ask most of the people, or a lot of people in town, they would agree that they want us to protect the residential district, while at the same time encouraging these sorts of events to take place in the wonderful places we already have established in town.
That was Janet's point. Yep.
Okay. I just
So-
wanted to voice my opinion as an event planner.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we got through basically 12.8.3D, I think, single day events by commercial entities in the B1, 2, 3, and 4 district. As a typo, 12.8.4, the last paragraph in my newer version says all such uses / events shall that require. Shall, I just crossed out with that. Does everybody else have that?
Yeah.
The word that?
Mhm.
We cross out that, shall require a zoning permit and insert the word and shall be limited to the hours of 12 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's just a,
Okay.
I think you got 2 shells in there you don't want also.
um,
Shall
Shall require-
zoning
and shall be limited,
And be limited.
okay,
Okay.
shall require. Hi, Shelley.
Hi.
Where are you?
12.8.4, the
video.
last paragraph.
Okay. All such uses, events shall require a zoning permit and be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All such uses, events.
Oh, this
Here's,
doesn't
this
have.
says shall
Oh,
require.
okay.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
you're-
this one over here says shall. This must be an older one.
Shall require a zoning permit
Okay.
and be limited, okay, and we eliminate the second shall.
Correct.
Thank you, Dave. Janet, where else did you have another area where you actually had some additional language or just alternative language? And another thing that, well, you reviewed the fact that Wayne had an issue with this, that temporary events, 12.8.3, requiring no permit. B, annual events that have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more, before such and such a date. Wayne went on about the fact that it's exclusionary at best and it's arbitrary, and again, we got council's opinion, and that Connecticut case law, according to council, deems the word grandfathered as something that's not necessarily been in existence just for 3 years, but has been for 5 years. In other words, he was very specific about 2 or 3 years does not necessarily give you the right to have something grandfathered, but 5 years, according to Connecticut case law, it does. So that's.
Okay, and so you're right, I did have a suggestion for that section, that,
Which one?
12.8.3,
3B.
D.
B.
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 Okay, which I just brought up.
Okay, yeah, so it just says now, annual events that have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more. But the events that we were really considering here were annual events that previously had never had to be issued zoning permits, and that had been held at the same location for a period of.
You want to say had never been issued or had never been required to get a zoning permit?
Okay, yeah, whichever,
Either one.
yeah.
It shows sort of the historical intent of the fact that many of these institutions, churches, Steep Rock, goes on and on and on, T for 200, which don't think exists anymore, the Green Fair,
It shows past,
they're all.
past practices.
Didn't hear you.
Past practices.
Past practices.
So
Janet,
what do you want
annual-
to put in?
I want to add that these events never before had to have zoning permits.
So how do you want to word that in that section?
Well, I had annual events that previously had not been issued zoning permits, but Nick thought that previously had not been required to get a zoning permit.
Let's say, I like yours better, it flows better, not issued.
Annual events that previously had not been issued a zoning permit, that have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more before and state.
Yep.
Issued a zoning permit. Okay, so let me read this back to you. Annual events that have previously not been issued a zoning permit and have been held at the same location for a period of 5 years or more before insert date of amendment. Is that right?
Yep. It gives it a little bit of strength, and it gives it a little bit of content in terms of what's happened in the past.
Okay.
So I know that the commission likes to see the changes and the typos or whatever they are in boldface exactly the way we would propose them to go to public hearing.
Right.
We can, land use can, Shelley can type these up with the underlined, like we've had before. Underline would be omitted, the boldface would be the new language, to include these changes tonight, albeit not major changes, for our October meeting, at which point we could, if we wanted to, go to public hearing, or vote to have a public hearing probably in December. We need 2 months for another referral from planning and the COGS to submit their referrals.
Can I make a comment next?
Mm-hmm.
On Jan, I agree with almost everything that Janet wrote. I think it's very well done. I think I made the comment before in one of the meetings that Planning Commission, their comments were very concerned with the economic development and did not say anything about the conservation, which is equally part of their bailiwick. And I think we're exactly right in, maybe our focus is on that. I mean, we're trying to do both, whereas I don't think their comments reflected both. And I think they were a little vociferous in their argument there. I think the way it stands is pretty good. I might argue for, I'm not totally decided as to whether it ought to be 7 days or 9 days or 10 days. But, you know, I think we got in trouble because of somebody misinterpreted the 7 days. That was the whole start of our issue.
Yep.
And putting consecutive in there is a necessity.
Yeah, and
No, it was a lawyer.
yeah.
Well, yeah, but it was me too.
I mean, that's what it said, you know, I mean, they're interviewing this Supreme Court justice candidate today, you know, you gotta go by the letter of the law. If it's not there, you can't interpret it like it is.
Well, I think if there were nothing left to interpretation, then lawyers would be out of business. But putting that aside.
Well,
yeah, right.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, right. That's what we're all thinking.
I need him to draw up my will.
Yeah, right. All right. I think that the involvement of 2 separate weekends, I thought about this, and if you took away a day and limited to 6 2 3-day non-consecutive weekends, or 2 3-day. Anyway, I was trying to play with it. We give up a day, but it gets too complicated, and it's, you know, the writer of these regulations years ago, when when we actually had carnivals and circuses, and they thought that they had it pretty locked tight with that language. So, and I think philosophically and for the sake of, you know, let's just say the sake of everybody, all of us who live in the residential district, I would have to think long and hard and about changing it from the 7 days. But
Nick, were you thinking about the 6 to make them 6 consecutive days or 2 consecutive 3-day weekends? That sounds like it's complicated, but is that what you're looking for?
That's what I was thinking. Yes, 2 consecutive 3-day weekends.
Then you can't do anything in between. Somebody's little event, you can't do any of those little things that they want to do in between.
Well, that's right, but they get 2 weekends.
Right.
They get,
It'd be easy to say 9 consecutive days.
No.
Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 and 5 is 9.
well, I mean, the 9 versus the 7 is a different argument.
Yeah.
What Ray just brought up, which I've thought about in the past and over the last year and a half, was limiting the total number to 6 into 2 3-day weekends that are consecutive.
But then what about those people that do the Thursday, Friday?
Can't do it. Can't do it. So whoever, I mean, it's, you know, we're
Commissioners, we're talking about the residential district. We're not talking about a family wedding. We're not talking about a reunion, a family reunion. We're talking about having events in commercial, in residential districts. It's not fair to the people who purchase their property with a reasonable expectation of privacy and solitude that they have to put up with living next to events on whatever scale. Now, the existing conditions say 7 days, so I say we stay with those. But I would not be in favor of going to 2 weekends. I think that's a hardship for the people that own property.
And people, whether they're full-timers here or part-timers in Washington, and we have a lot more these days than we had 6 months ago. I think their expectations of weekends are when they have their privacy, and, so, I'm sticking with the 7 days, 7 consecutive days, and we could debate other options, but I think that the language that has been and still is the best. So, Shelley will type up our few, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Type up our few number of changes and I think distribute them to us as quick as you can. And we will, again, at our regular meeting, we'll have a discussion about this and whether or not we want to have a vote to go to public hearing. And so I'd love to put this 12-8 to bed. I think we all would. We have other fish to fry as well, 3.2 and other stuff. I don't propose that we get to 3.2 tonight. I think that Shelley has, have all the commissioners and alternates received the September 11, 2020 responses from Ziska to questions about 3.2?
Yes.
They were sent out, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, it's 10 of 9.
Nick, in gumming up the works here for a second, Nick, if there were a reporter tuning into this, a fair-minded fellow or gal, what would their headline be in tomorrow morning's paper regarding what we accomplished tonight to let the public know? Could you take a crack at that? Because I'm not sure I can.
I think the reporter would say, finally, after 18 months of deliberation, the Washington Zoning Commission is going to press for themselves with a set of regulations regarding 12.8, and they seem to be on their way to a public hearing.
Okay. That's
Not that much has changed, really, other than some slight clarifications, as far as I'm concerned. So, and we had a very nice, I would call it a dissertation from Janet in discussing, you know, her rationale for what we are doing and how they fit in with a plan of conservation and development, and suggesting that Mr. Heilman's comments, there's also there's other discussion about his comments that she brought up very eloquently, or alternative conclusions you can come to rather than his.
Janet, I supported and welcomed your letter. I understood it. It was well reasoned. So I think we ought to see if we all agree on that, so we can move forward with a single voice.
I think that the consensus is that we all agree with Janet's wonderful, I call it a dissertation.
I'm sorry about that. So is there any reason we can't call for the public meeting in December now, that we need 2 months before we get into the snowy season in January?
We can vote tonight to go to public hearing, but typically, historically, the commission likes to see the finished product as we've had, but now we have some additions to it, and I don't blame them. Plus, it's only 2 weeks away that we need the 2 months no matter what, and our next meeting is roughly in 2 weeks, so we're not really losing or gaining any time by putting off a potential vote to go to public hearing at our regular October meeting.
Good enough.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's see. Does anybody have anything else to add or to say, or any discussion about 12.8? And to the public who have tuned in to listen, we appreciate your tuning in, and I think what we should come up with for Shelley's comments to Shelley about how we think this works, how we think we meeting in person at the town hall versus virtually, and I think it's fine. It's nice to have a gathering. Ray or Deborah, were you reluctant to come tonight for COVID reasons, or are you just
I forgot it wasn't a Zoom meeting. I'm so used to it now that I forgot we were going to try to meet in person. I apologize.
Okay, that's fine. That's a good excuse. And Ray,
I would be COVIDing in 2 weeks also, unless you could put me in a glass enclosed booth there in the room.
A bubble.
Understandable. It's understandable.
Yep, no, totally understandable.
Ray is really afraid.
Yep.
More so.
All right, so
Right.
what is our sense about our regular October meeting? Do we want to try this again? Do we want to go back to a virtual situation? We have a couple of public hearings coming up, or continuations of. Can't remember exactly what the.
Let's do the hybrid
That's what I
again,
said.
if that works.
Well, the hybrid
Hybrid?
eliminates examination of maps
Oh,
unless we come in beforehand to look at them, which is doable.
Mhm. Well, at our regular meeting, we have Van Veen on E Street. We have Netherland Hollow, which there are issues there. That's a continuation of a public hearing. Van Veen, we started, that's continued. What else? Flirtation Avenue is off the calendar for a little while.
Yes. And then
We have,
Kirby Road, which is Dana Gibson's son.
okay, yeah, George Gibson on Kirby Road, Danny Gibson's son wants to rebuild a shed or something?
Yeah, it's pretty.
So that's rebuilding a non-conforming structure? Okay. That public hearing will start in 2 weeks. Yeah. But relatively simple. I think the East Street, the Van Veen, people should come down and take a look at the site plan. And especially now Shelley, do you know if the representatives of these applicants that are in the middle of a public hearing will be here in a in-person situation?
No, I don't. I can ask.
Okay.
I'm not sure we should ask them.
Well, in other words,
I think they ought to be remote.
okay, it's just, well, if we have the paperwork and, well, we
Add another 12 people in there.
well, there's one person per applicant.
They might not just be one.
Okay, yeah. That's fine, as long as we have everything, all the site plans, and they can provide copies so that each table has a copy of exactly what we're looking at.
Right.
Okay.
I'll
that's
check
fine.
with Tammy. I don't know what we have in the office already, but if anything new comes in, I will ask for additional copies. Like, so there,
Yep,
and we can also put copies out on the front steps in that glass cabinet for commissioners that are not going to come in and they plan to do the meeting remotely.
okay. So it's the sense of the commission that we will meet in person in 2 weeks at our regular October meeting, and so be it. On the agenda is privilege of the floor, but I think that was put in by mistake. This was a work session in effect, and unless someone's house is burning down and we need to know it, I'll entertain a motion to
It can't be done in a special meeting. It can't be done tonight.
what can't be done.
Privilege of the floor. It can't be done at a special meeting.
No, that's why I said, unless your house is burning down and we need to know about it, we're not going to entertain that, yeah. Even if your house is burning down.
Yeah, even if
All right,
that,
I make,
nothing we can do about it.
I make a motion that we adjourn our meeting, special
Second,
meeting. Second, Ray, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
good night.
Appreciate it. Good night, Ray. Good night, Deborah.
Thanks for the
Good night.
call, Ray.
Yeah. Good
night.
night, Shelley.
Game over now?
That one should be over, the other one's starting.
What do you think of the hearing today?
Okay.